Tonight, the holiday travel rush is on, but can the airlines handle the surge? The unofficial start to summer is here as travelers coast to coast head out for the Memorial Day weekend. Millions expected to pack the highways and millions more hopping on flights to get away, putting the nation's airlines to the test. Will this be a repeat of the disaster we saw over the winter holidays? Plus, tips tonight what you can do if your flight gets canceled or delayed. Members of Congress also heading out for the holiday weekend without a deal to raise the debt ceiling. The deadline to avoid a catastrophic default now just a week away. Where those tense negotiations stand with time running out. And terrifying moments in the skies over South Korea. That's after a man ripped open a plane door, sending wind whipping through the cabin. Several passengers rushed to the hospital. How experts say this incredibly rare and dangerous incident could have happened. Deadly hospital strike, a Russian missile destroying a clinic in eastern Ukraine, killing at least 2 people and wounding dozens more. Why President Zelensky is calling this aerial assault a crime against humanity. Plus, cold case break, a woman who disappeared in the 80s, finally identified with the help of DNA testing. Now the new focus, finding her killer. And saved at sea, a 3-year-old girl on a cruise with her family, suddenly in need of urgent medical care. The high-flying efforts to get her to a hospital. Top story starts right now. And good evening. I'm Aaron Gilchrist in for Tom Llamas. We begin Top Story tonight with the Great Escape already underway. On this Memorial Day weekend, Americans traveling in numbers we have not seen since before the pandemic. Take a live look here at the traffic in Dallas, Texas. Some cars there crawling, really, as drivers look to get out of the city. Those travelers, just some of the 37 million Americans expected to hit the roads this weekend. Another 3.5 million getting away by plane. Things running smoothly so far at most major airports around the country. Just over 100 flights canceled today. That's out of 50,000. Airlines hoping to avoid a repeat of the holiday travel nightmare we saw this winter when that Southwest computer system melted down, leaving millions of passengers stranded. Southwest and other airlines saying that they've beefed up their staffing and they're ready for the crowds. But this weekend will put all of that to the test. We have full team coverage on this tonight, from what's going on in the air, on the roads, plus your holiday forecast. First up, aviation correspondent Tom Costello leads us off.
From the East Coast to the Midwest and way out west.
We're really early, and just to try to beat all this holiday traffic.
A record surge of post-pandemic travelers snaking through airports. 2.6 million on Thursday alone as airlines face a big stress test. Under pressure to prove they've improved after last year's summer travel mess when 45,000 flights were canceled, 22% delayed. The good news, fewer than 1% of flights today were canceled.
It's only Friday, but so far so good.
But this is just a dress rehearsal for what could be the busiest summer travel season in years.
If you're traveling this summer, domestic airfares down 20% over last year. However, if you're going international, it will cost you the highest in 5 years. $1,200 to go to Europe on average, $1,800 to go to Asia.
We have added thousands of pilots to our complement. We've also added thousands, over 22,000 in our ground operations as far as our gate agents, ticket agents.
But it's not just airlines under pressure. The FAA is short some 3,000 air traffic controllers, forcing airlines to fly fewer flights but with bigger planes to accommodate passengers.
There's fewer air traffic controllers today than there were 30 years ago. And we just have to fix that.
That, though, will take time.
We do need to grow our air traffic control workforce. We're doing that right now. We're hiring like crazy.
Meanwhile, this is what happens when the cockpit door gets locked. A Southwest pilot forced to climb through the cockpit window to get back inside. The flight left on time.
And Tom Costello joins us now from Reagan National Airport. So, Tom, talk to us about what's going right this year when you compare it to last Memorial Day.
Well, to begin with, every airline has hired a lot of pilots, a lot of flight attendants, a lot of ground crews, and they now all insist that they can fly the schedules that they advertise, that they're selling tickets for, unlike last year. But as you well know, the big variable is always going to be the weather. It's responsible for 63% of delays. So far today, it's been great. We'll see how it goes over the weekend. But the bottom line is weather is the big wild card.
Tom Costello, thank you for the view from the air. On the ground, though, this year, this could be a far busier travel weekend compared to last year. In the middle of it all for us is NBC's Emily Ikeda joining us now on the road, on the New Jersey Turnpike. On the move there, really, Emily. How are things looking?
On the move, but very slowly. At times, we're doing a bit more sitting than moving. We'll give you a look from the camera attached to the front windshield of our car. You can see we're inching along I-95 South, not far from New York City. And we've been getting reports of major delays from across the country, backups from Los Angeles to Dallas to Houston and Atlanta. More than 37 million people are hitting the road this holiday weekend. That's up more than 2 million compared to this time last year, according to AAA. And the increased traffic, it's fueled in part by the relatively nice weather, not to mention the savings at the pump. The national average for a gallon of gas is actually down by more than $1 compared to the holiday weekend last year. And further crowding roads, Aaron, tonight is the first of 3 concerts for Taylor Swift, a highly popular superstar. Remember, when it comes to those concerts, they're attracting 200,000 plus people. So it's a perfect storm, if you will.
Oh, wow. Yeah, going to be a lot of people trying to get around the holiday traffic to get to Taylor Swift for sure. Let me ask you, though, what's sort of the pro move here? If you don't want to get stuck in all the traffic like that, what are some of the best times to be on the interstate?
So I would say, easy rule of thumb, leave early in the morning or late at night. Remember, some of the worst bottlenecks still lie ahead, with so many travelers expected to return home, especially on Monday. But keep in mind, with more remote work flexibility, some folks will be lingering and traveling back on Tuesday. So we could continue to see delays through Tuesday, Aaron.
Emily Ikeda on the Jersey Turnpike. Thank you. For more now on how to beat the travel rush, Clint Henderson, managing editor for The Points Guide, joins us now. Clint, we appreciate you being here. You know, last season we saw just a real meltdown in air travel last holiday season, right? Are you seeing any sort of warning signs that that could happen again, or does it look more like we are really in a good place this time around?
So I will say I'm cautiously optimistic. Things look really good today. I just flew myself to LaGuardia, and it was all green arrows. And it looks like we've got very few delays, very few cancellations today. I would say that's hopeful for this summer. But as Tom Costello alluded to, weather is going to be the key wild card. What we've seen happen is if there's any kind of weather event, it leads to a domino effect, which can be disastrous, as we've seen over the past year. So cautiously optimistic. I will say that it does appear things are in better shape than they were this time last summer. And I would also say the one area we really need to keep an eye on is air traffic controllers. They do not have enough folks. They've reduced schedules, as you mentioned earlier in the broadcast. And I would say that's the one area I'm really nervous about, especially if we start getting some weather events, things start going south there.
Given that fact, I mean, the weather, I know we can't control the weather, but are airlines just simply not in a position where they can sort of pre-plan and be ready to deal with that without having a major impact, knowing what summers are like around the country?
Well, they said last summer, they said they were ready, and then they weren't. So if we start getting some storms, that's when the real test lies. And, frankly, I still don't think the airlines are fully staffed enough. And I feel like there's not enough give in the system in case things go wrong. So I'm hopeful this summer is going to be much better than last summer. Summer was really bad. So it's a low bar that we're working against.
Well, very quickly, I want to ask you, I think we're taking some hits to your signal there, but what do you encourage travelers to do if they run into a canceled flight or a big travel delay?
So first thing you want to do is make sure that you have a backup plan. Know what other airlines operate your route, so that if things go sideways with your airline, you can reach out to whatever airline you're flying and say, hey, put me on this Delta flight instead. You want to have the airline app installed. More and more airlines are using live chat. So live chat, if your flight gets canceled, run to the desk to get yourself rebooked, but also be on social media, follow them on Twitter, and make sure you have the airlines app installed on your phone, because you want to beat all those rest of those people who are on the canceled flight to get rebooked.
Yeah, and when you run to that desk, be nice. Sometimes you just got to sweet talk the agent at the counter. Clint Henderson from The Points Guy, we appreciate it. Clint, thanks. Well, as we mentioned near the top of the show, the key to all of this Memorial Day travel is the weather, right? Meteorologist Angie Lastman joins us now for the latest on that. So, Angie, what are you seeing out there?
We're seeing a couple of spots that could be a little soggy. We could also see some of those stronger storms. So let's give you the lay of the land. We've had the afternoon and evening hours dealing with some showers, some thunderstorms across parts of the southern plains. And we also have all of this moisture that we're watching to move onshore for parts of the Carolinas. It's going to be a couple of days of some soggy conditions for folks there. We could see some flooding concerns, picking up a couple of inches of rain by the time the weekend is over. That heavy rain and wind will last into tomorrow. Meanwhile, in the Great Lakes, up into the Northeast, great weather. Picture perfect weather for this weekend. Great for the outdoors. Some strong storms still possible as we look to the plains, even through tomorrow, although not quite as robust as what we were expecting for today. We'll still have some pesky showers and storms into parts of the northern plains as we get into Sunday. The heat is really on for places like Phoenix, who will hit the high 90s, triple digits for some folks out in the Southwest, too. Meanwhile, still damp, still breezy for folks on Sunday as we get into the Carolinas and the Mid-Atlantic. That's really where you're going to need either the indoor plans or maybe the umbrella if you have those outdoor plans. The stubborn showers will last into Memorial Day for folks there. Meanwhile, it is sunny and warm in the midsection of the country. Milwaukee will hit 74 degrees into the afternoon hours on Memorial Day. New York hits 80 degrees. It'll be picture perfect. Meanwhile, out west, some lingering showers for parts of the Northwest. We have those Texas storms that we will watch for as well as we finish out our Memorial Day weekend, Darren.
Angie Lastman for us today. Thank you, Angie. We turn now to the latest on the debt ceiling negotiations with a potential default just days away now. President Biden just moments ago saying that he is optimistic negotiators will reach a deal tonight. That's as their deadline to get one done has just been extended. Garrett Hake has more details.
Tonight, the president and lawmakers leaving Washington for the holiday weekend.
I hope we'll have some clear evidence tonight before the clock strikes 12.
Without a deal to avert a government default. But now word the negotiators will have more time. Instead of a June 1st deadline, the Treasury Department now says the U.S. will not run out of money to pay its bills until June 5th.
We know it's a crunch time. We know it's not easy, but we're going to make sure we're not just trying to get an agreement. We're trying to get something that's worthy of the American people.
And now the outlines of a deal could be emerging. Tonight, Democratic sources say they feel optimistic that any agreement will eventually include a 2-year extension on lifting the debt ceiling. But Republicans, who are demanding spending cuts and spending caps in order to do that, say there is no deal yet.
Continue to have major issues that we have not bridged the gap on.
Everyone wants a detail of this. Everyone wants a tweet. I want an agreement that changes the trajectory of the country.
One of the biggest sticking points remaining may be Republican demands for stricter work requirements for those who receive federal public assistance. But Democrats are opposed. Would the GOP drop those demands to get a deal? Republican negotiator Garrett Graves today.
Hell no, not a chance.
The White House all but silent about the talks today. No briefing for reporters. Though some of those involved in the talks were at a White House event today, the only face-to-face meeting between the parties' negotiators today.
It continues to be a very candid conversation about how we're going to move forward, if we're going to be able to come together and ultimately get a deal, get an agreement.
And Garrett Hake joins us now from just across the street on Capitol Hill here. So, Garrett, we know the president and members of Congress are going to be out of town. It's a long holiday weekend. Do we expect any more progress in these talks over the next few days?
That's certainly the hope, Aaron. Obviously, negotiations can continue remotely, but a lot of the conversations that have to happen right now are internal amongst Republicans and amongst Democrats. What kind of deal can we agree to, and do we have the votes that we can put forward if we get there? They need a productive weekend if they're still going to meet this new deadline.
We know we talk about a deal. The deal is really just the first step in this process, right, in preventing this default. What's the timeline look like for after there's a deal among the key players here?
Yeah, that's exactly right. You can't put a handshake deal on the House floor. First, you'd have to take the deal, turn it into legislative text. That can take a couple of days. Then the House has this rule where you have to sit on any legislation for 72 hours before even the House can act. The Senate would follow. They are, of course, historically slow on bills like this. It's likely that lawmakers are going to need almost all of these additional days that the Treasury Secretary just said are available to them to get something to the president's desk.
All right, Garrett Haig for us on Capitol Hill tonight. Garrett, thank you. Now to the pair of sentences handed down today in the Capitol riot cases. Jessica Watkins, an Army veteran and a member of the far-right group the Oath Keepers, sentenced to 8.5 years in prison for her role in the insurrection. Kenneth Harrelson, another Oath Keeper, given 4 years. This just comes one day after the founder of that group, Stuart Rhodes, was given an 18-year sentence, the longest yet for any January 6th defendant. For more on this, we're joined now by Ken Delanian here in Washington, D.C. with us. So, Ken, the judge didn't give Watson or Harrelson anywhere near as long a prison sentence as the founder of the Oath Keepers. What more can you tell us about these decisions, how they came down?
Hey, Aaron. Yeah, the judge really found that both of those people were in a different category than Stuart Rhodes, in part because they expressed remorse. They also were acquitted of the most serious charge of seditious conspiracy, although they were convicted of obstruction of an official proceeding, which does carry a maximum 20-year sentence in prison. But Jessica Watkins, an Army veteran, was extremely remorseful during her testimony, said she had really gone astray. The judge said he took that into account, but he also said that she did play a really significant role in the Capitol attack. Remember, she led Oath Keepers into the building in a military stack formation. She can be heard celebrating the attack on a walkie-talkie app. So she got 8.5 years. Kenneth Harrelson was really more of a foot soldier. He said that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and the judge essentially agreed and said that essentially he believes that Kenneth Harrelson is a good man. So he got 4 years, and he's been in jail pending trial, so he could be out in as little as a year, Aaron.
And Ken, while I have you, I do want to ask you, too, about this new reporting we're seeing that members of former President Donald Trump's team moved classified documents at his home in Florida just one day before the FBI visited that property. This was before that infamous August raid, of course. What effect could these revelations have on the case against the former president, if any?
Well, this is a pretty significant development because it suggests, it doesn't prove, but it suggests that there was a scheme to essentially hide documents from investigators. Now, this was the day before the Justice Department was coming down there with a subpoena to demand the classified documents back. And according to this reporting, a couple of aides to Donald Trump moved them to a storage room. Now, the reporting doesn't say that Trump ordered that to happen, and the Justice Department would have to prove that if they're going to make this into a crime. But nonetheless, it is significant because if it's found that Donald Trump intentionally withheld documents that the Justice Department was seeking, particularly after the subpoena was served on him, that could be obstruction of justice, and that is a very, very serious crime, Aaron.
Ken Delanian for us today. Ken, thank you. A shocking mid-air scare caught on camera. A passenger opening an exit door on a plane while it was landing. Steve Patterson takes us through what happened next.
Tonight, the heart-pounding seconds in the skies above South Korea. Passengers white-knuckling through a wind-whipped Asiana Airlines flight moments after a man allegedly ripped open the plane's emergency door minutes before landing.
It is recklessly endangering all the other passengers and crew on the airplanes.
Airline officials say the plane carrying 194 passengers was about 700 feet above the ground when a man in his 30s, seated in the exit row, was allegedly tinkering with the handle and eventually opened the door.
How could a passenger open a door like this while the flight is still up in the air?
It can be opened in the last few seconds of flight so that should on landing, the airplane end up off the side of the runway, you can get the doors open and get the evacuation started.
At higher altitudes, cabin pressure helps seal the doors on most planes, so it wouldn't open even if someone tried. But just before landing, that pressure is gone and doors are able to be opened. An Asiana Airlines representative telling NBC News the plane landed safely following the incident and that 9 passengers were taken to the hospital for minor breathing issues. The man who opened the door, detained by police. The scare in Korea conjuring a rash of other airborne incidents in the U.S., spurred by unruly passengers. Earlier this year, a Delta passenger was arrested at LAX after opening the emergency door and sliding off the plane before takeoff. Tonight, another scare in the sky with passengers grateful to be back on solid ground. Steve Patterson, NBC News.
Now we turn to Ukraine, where the battle rages on. A harrowing scene this morning after a civilian hospital in Dnipro was blasted by a Russian missile, killing at least 2 civilians and hurting nearly 30 others, including 2 young children. NBC's Molly Hunter has the latest now from Kyiv.
On Friday morning, first responders calling out for survivors. There's a woman on the 3rd floor, a woman and a man, 3rd floor, this voice says. The video captured by a police officer's body camera arriving at the scene of the latest Russian missile attack in the southeastern city of Dnipro. Friday morning, a Russian missile tore through a civilian hospital, killing at least 2 people, injuring more than 30, including 2 children. I was cleaning the house, this man says, when the blast threw me on the wall. Smoke is seen pouring out of the 3-story building, and Ukrainian officials insist it was not a military target. President Zelensky calling it another crime against humanity. The Russian Defense Ministry saying the target of the strikes has been achieved. And the Ukrainian military says Russia is increasingly targeting military targets ahead of a counteroffensive, but civilians still bearing the cost. It comes after Russia declared victory in the city of Bakhmut, and a day after Wagner mercenary chief Yevgeny Prigozhin started to withdraw his fighters from the city. A city laid to waste after 9 months of the bloodiest battle of this war. Prigozhin claims he has lost 20,000 fighters, and the true death toll on both sides closely held government secrets. It's Russia's biggest battlefield advance since last summer. But while symbolic, analysts say Bakhmut is not strategic for either side. And unclear what victory means when a city once home to 80,000 people now looks like this.
Now, Aaron, Prigozhin said he was pulling all of his Wagner fighters out of Bakhmut by June 1st. So watching the next week very, very closely. And then what is expected to happen is that Russian regular troops, already very overstretched, will fill those gaps. And it will be a test. Can they hold the line? And if they can't, really an opportunity for Prigozhin to then blame Moscow, the Kremlin, and the defense minister Shoigu, who he's had a long-standing feud with, for losing the ground that he gained for Russia. Aaron?
Molly Hunter for us in Ukraine. Thank you. Still ahead tonight, nightmare in paradise. An American teenager going overboard while on vacation in the Caribbean. The massive search for him now underway. Plus, the Pennsylvania nurse charged with homicide. How investigators say she allegedly killed 2 patients in her care. And to the rescue, the moment a Coast Guard aircrew dropped onto a cruise ship at sea to save a child having a medical emergency. Stay with us. Top story is just getting started. We're back now with the search for a missing American teenager in the Caribbean. Authorities believe he fell off a party boat while celebrating his high school graduation. Tonight, questions swirling about how this happened. Here's NBC's Maggie Vespa.
The nightmare continues in a Caribbean paradise, where tonight authorities from 2 countries are searching for an American teen who went overboard in the Bahamas Wednesday. 18-year-old Cameron Robbins, a star Louisiana athlete fresh from his high school graduation, seen here in screenshots of cell phone video posted on Snapchat, seemingly swimming in dark waters off of Nassau in the Bahamas. A life preserver appears to float nearby. An employee at Blackbeard's Revenge, a local party boat company, telling NBC News Robbins had been on board their pirate-themed ship seen here that night. It's unclear why the Baton Rouge teen went into the water or how exactly he went missing. The U.S. Coast Guard tweeting air crews are assisting the Royal Bahamas Defense Force with search efforts, confirming Robbins is believed to have fallen overboard from a sunset cruise. Robbins attended University Lab High School, a preparatory school through Louisiana State University. LSU confirming he was on a trip with other recent grads days after the school ceremony. That trip not linked to the school, administrators say. Tonight, his family writing, Cameron is a strong kid, so we remain full of hope that he will be back with us soon. Adding he would be proud and amazed to see the outpour of support we have received. In the meantime, we will keep our focus on working to find him. The international search playing out as America's summer travel surge gets underway. Tonight, one teen's plans to celebrate a rite of passage turned tragic. The director of Robbins High School in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, writing that extra counselors are available on campus and adding, quote, words fall short of expressing the worry our entire school community is feeling. Aaron?
Maggie Vespa, thank you. When we come back, inside a volcano, the new drone footage from the crater of Mexico's most active volcano. The latest on the alert in place as it continues to spew ash and smoke. Back now with Top Stories news feed, starting with the Western Pennsylvania nurse accused of killing at least 2 patients. Heather Presdy is facing multiple charges, including homicide and attempted murder. Authorities say she injected patients with lethal doses of insulin, leading to 2 deaths and 1 hospitalization. 2 of the patients did not even take insulin. She has reportedly been accused of abusive behavior toward patients in the past. The Coast Guard rescuing a child from a cruise ship after she suffered a medical emergency. New video showing that cruise ship about 90 miles off the California coast when a guardsman drops down onto the deck. The team quickly getting the child and her mother into the basket there, airlifting them off the ship. The child was taken to the hospital where she's reported to be in stable condition. Mexico's most active volcano continuing to spew smoke and ash. New drone footage from Mexico's Navy showing plumes of ash billowing out of the crater there. The country raised an alert level earlier this week after that volcano, just about 45 miles outside Mexico City, started showing signs of an eruption. Millions of residents were told to be ready for an evacuation. And Pope Francis pulled out of his Friday audiences because of a fever. The Vatican confirming the report to reporters that the 86-year-old Catholic leader was feeling unwell, but not providing any further details. The Pope has suffered from a host of health issues in recent years. It is unclear whether he will resume private audiences on Saturday. Now to the alarming nationwide shortage of cancer drugs. Hospitals and clinics running out, leaving patients worrying about how they will get these life-saving drugs. Katie Beck has the story.
Carrie Shurkinski is battling stage 3 ovarian cancer. And due to a drug shortage, her fight is even more painful. At her last chemotherapy treatment, the Florida clinic ran out of the drugs she needed. She says she was sent home.
Well, why didn't anybody tell me this?
The drug, called carboplatin, is widely used for treating breast, ovarian, and other cancers. It's highly effective with minimal side effects. This month, the American Cancer Society issuing a warning call. The shortage of certain cancer drugs has become a serious and life-threatening issue.
This is the bin for carboplatin usually. As you can see, it's completely empty.
Oncologist Dr. Lucio Gordon says he's had zero supply of carboplatin for nearly 2 weeks. A recent survey found doctors in 40 states said they had no supply of key chemotherapy drugs.
This can't wait another 6 weeks or 6 months to be resolved.
Currently, 14 oncology drugs are on the FDA drug shortage list.
We have a whole team that's working night and day with the industry.
FDA Commissioner Robert Califf says drug shortages are getting worse because generic versions of the medicines have become so inexpensive to consumers. Producing them is no longer profitable for manufacturers, so many have stopped. Califf says the vast majority are imported. Quality control issues have also played a part.
In any market, things get out of kilter, and that's definitely happened here.
Are you guys working urgently to find some type of short-term solution?
In terms of the short term, this is the highest priority.
Califf says the priority is to bring more manufacturers into the market and into the U.S. The Association for Accessible Medicines, who represents drug makers, says they too are deeply concerned, but added policymakers must address shortages in a manner that is holistic and long-term, solving for all aspects related to shortages. As for Cherkinsky, she's worried her treatments are altered, now using a different but similar drug with more side effects.
There isn't anything that works as effectively. It is the drug I need.
A critical problem, a solution unknown. Katie Beck, NBC News, Tallahassee, Florida.
Well, now we turn to a really inspiring new documentary from one of our own colleagues here at NBC News, MSNBC breaking news anchor Richard Louie, taking viewers inside his own journey caring for his father during his battle with Alzheimer's, and also sharing 2 more stories of families caring for their loved ones with both physical and mental illnesses. And through it all, there is a common thread, a love that is unconditional.
I'm Richard Louie, live in New York City. I'd been a journalist for 15 years, and then my dad got diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
It's my son, Richard.
Good to see you, too. It was a lonely road until I found others.
The oncologist said that it looked like somebody had taken Kate and dipped her in cancer.
We know he struggles with brain injury. The VA actually considers him 350% disabled.
Constant alertness, watchfulness, inability to sleep.
Sometimes he wakes up crying.
Boom, my mind was a mess.
In this house, we say the word cancer, cancer, with a little lilt in our voice, but he knows that something's not good.
You dig it? Hey, Pastor Louie?
I'm not ready to be a single parent.
If you recognize me, blink once.
You only get one of these in a lifetime.
Livy?
Love you too.
The reason that I can carry on, it's because of family, community, and love.
Richard Louie joins us now from New York. Richard, really appreciate you, first of all, sharing these stories that are so deep and so personal. I know this has really been a labor of love for you. If we can go back to that moment in the trailer we just watched, you're talking to your own father through the headset there while he's lying in bed, and he acknowledges you. He recognizes you just by giving you that blink you asked for. Yeah, take me back to that moment. What was going through your mind there, and why did you decide to share these moments with the world?
You know, Aaron, and first of all, good evening to you. That one picture has a lot of things happening in it. We were trying to figure out how to find my dad because he was being taken away by the disease, something I know you're very aware of, and Alzheimer's specifically, given your community work. And as the disease was taking him away, I had to wear a little name tag that actually had my name on it. It says, I'm Richard, your son. The hearing aid was so that he could actually hear me say hello to him. And I was worried that we lost him. And so I tried to say, because he could no longer talk, I said, hey, Dad, if you can hear me, blink once. And when he blinked, I was shocked, Aaron. And I actually let my entire family know. And I did it 2 or 3 more times. And he did blink. It's the small wins as you're starting to lose somebody. And it is also something else I wanted to show folks is that you can do things to relearn to talk and communicate with your loved ones, as I had to do here, as our roles were switching.
Yeah, it's beautiful to watch that moment with you and knowing that, you're being an example for people to sort of understand what they can do. I know it took you 7 years to make this documentary. What did you learn from these other families you spoke to after spending so much time with them? And how did this sort of impact you and how you cared for your dad?
You know, Aaron, how you start things and you think it's one thing and then you finish it and it's completely something else. This is exactly what this was. I started by saying, I feel like I'm alone. And then I started to reach out, as I described in that trailer, to others that were going through this because of some community work. And I found that families like the Buschatzes and the Thomases, that there could be as many as 100 million Americans, according to the Caregiving Action Network, that are going through this with me today. And so they taught me to find the joy despite difficulty. When you look at the Thomas family, Kate Thomas, she passed a year ago But in the last year, the president signed a law that says all women veterans can now get mammograms for the rest of their life. Luke Bouchatz, which you see in the video there, he started a backcountry excursion company so that he can help other veterans going through PTS. So they showed me that I could live the good stuff despite the bad stuff. And that was really instructional for me personally.
Yeah, and what an awesome message, too. Just a minute here left, Richard, but I do want to ask you, for all the families, the family caregivers out there who may be watching tonight, what resources are available to people who maybe are struggling while they're caring for a loved one and don't really know where to turn, maybe?
Yeah, first off, Aaron, it's tough, and it's not going to be all peaches and cream, as you can probably imagine. But find the things personally that will work for you. My mother started to play the violin. It was a way she could have her self-therapy and show her love for my father. That was one way of getting through it. Amy Bouchatz started to be a marathoner. There are also some resources that you can go to. There's government resources, 988. Dial that if you have a question about mental health during Mental Health Awareness Month. Findsupport.gov at the bottom of the screen there. That just came up in this last month during Mental Health Awareness Month. And, of course, caregiving associations, Alzheimer's Association, RCI, Caring Across Generations, and the National Association on Mental Illness. All of these are places, Aaron, key thing, reach out directly or indirectly, and you'll find help.
All right. It is wonderful. Richard Louie, we appreciate you telling the story, sharing with us, and we want to thank you for being here on Top Story tonight. And for everyone watching, make sure to tune in to Unconditional. That's Saturday at 11 p.m. Eastern on MSNBC. Well, coming up here, breaking the case, the body of a woman who disappeared in the 80s finally identified with the help of DNA testing. The search now for a killer. We're back now with a cold case out of California. It was a mystery for nearly 40 years. A family not able to learn what happened to their mother. Thanks to DNA technology, though, investigators were finally able to help bring some peace to a grieving family. NBC's Stephen Romo has more.
A family finally has some closure after the body of a beloved mother is identified almost 4 decades after her disappearance. The murder victim, a Jane Doe for 37 years, was Claudette Powers. And authorities say the California cold case was cracked thanks to a family DNA match after all these years.
The fact that she'd been dead since 1986 was a huge shock to them.
It was 2 years before that, the last time her family saw Claudette, when she was in her early 20s.
Caused a lot of turmoil with them. I mean, that's now one mystery just turned into a bigger one.
Powers' daughters, who were toddlers at the time of her disappearance, previously believed their mother had abandoned them, according to NBC San Diego.
She loved her kids very much.
Claudette's sister Laura finally able to lay her sister to rest, discussing their mother's relief.
My mom can pass on now when it comes time, knowing that her oldest child has been found.
But mystery remains. The killer still unidentified.
We have to reconstruct her life from back in the 80s. Where she worked, where she lived, who her friends were. Did she date anybody?
An unknown male victim was found dead around the same time as Claudette, according to authorities, about 14 miles away at a remote campsite. The sheriff's office telling NBC San Diego that the two were dressed similarly, so it's possible they had been together at the time of their deaths.
If you are still alive and you knew my sister and you knew what happened to her, please come forward, please.
Authorities hoping the technology used to identify Claudette might be the first step in finding her killer, too. DNA from a sample of Claudette's hair was cross-referenced with publicly searchable genealogy websites. Then detectives used census records and obituaries to build family trees, ultimately leading them to Claudette's immediate family.
People put their DNA in. That's the only way we're going to be able to solve these cases.
The San Diego County Sheriff's Office saying it's the 7th time the homicide unit has used genetic genealogy to identify remains in an unsolved case. With this major break, authorities offering up to $1,000 in reward money for information that leads to an arrest.
And Stephen joins us now from New York. So, Stephen, this is a relief for this family, obviously, but there are some privacy concerns here, right, with these DNA matching services. Do the companies and investigators, how do they navigate them?
Yeah, Aaron, you're right. The investigators here, they use only publicly searchable genealogy websites, which gives them access to data from certain people, and only if those people opt in when they first sign up for those websites. And in this case, Aaron, it certainly paid off for this family.
Stephen Romo, thank you, Stephen. And thank you so much for watching Top Story. For Tom Llamas, I'm Aaron Gilchrist in Washington. Stay right there. More NBC News Now on the way.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.